Bionic too.
Just so everyone is aware, Chambers is unmuted and we are live on YouTube.
Hans, did you hear that, Hans? Amanda says it's live.
Okay, wait a couple minutes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we still got
Thanks, Amanda.
a minute or two, according to the clock on the answer.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna ask. On
No, sir.
I should have figured out which one. There's some kind of relief.
Monday.
Yeah, oh my God.
Grass is growing like crazy. I know. I come the other day. I'm going.
I was like,
Yeah.
right, I know. I would just, it's an omen, yeah. I had my.
100% right.
These are in trouble. So you don't get it.
Like I literally was. It was.
Yeah, but if you jump in there, I'll run.
It's a third. Fine.
Had a long day. Tell me that. It's better for tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yes, if everybody's ready. Meeting. Salute to the flag. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Minutes to approve, March 22nd.
Second, Basile.
Any discussion or criticisms on the minutes? Not all those in favor, aye.
Aye. Well, you put it that way.
Anyone opposed? Carried. Thank you. Mr. Dempsey, I believe you're first.
Hi, you have my report. Anyone has any questions?
Any questions? Last call. All done. Thank you. That was quick. Grace, if you're here.
Good evening. You have my report. If you have any questions?
Any questions for Grace? Finance Department. If not, thank you. You have one?
Yeah, I'm assuming these two people for the audit, the week of May 15th.
Oh, Drescher Malecki.
Oh, it's a law firm.
It's a company, yes. That's who we've used. We used last year as well.
And that audit is
Required.
just a general.
That's our year-end audit.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Petcher and Shea, but now they've changed it.
Inside joke. Thank you.
And then it gets filed somewhere, Grace, I mean.
Well, there's the AUD that we have to file with the state. And that's due May 1st. And then we'll have Drescher Malecki come in and they'll do the year-end audit. And they'll do our financials. Usually they do like a 10-minute presentation with the legislator.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Good.
All right.
Jennifer. Grace.
You have my report in front of you. Do you have any questions?
Any questions for Jennifer? Well, this is gonna be fast tonight.
Don't say it out loud.
Yeah.
I got one on.
Go ahead. I'll let Andy go.
Because I had a person approach me on this for the cell towers, complaining about
taxes?
Yes.
You, for the record, explain, so it's in the record, how that works.
So there are some cell tower owners that have approached our office and asked for us to assess the cell tower separate from the land. Our county does not create suffix parcels, so we don't create parcels on just structures. We do have ones that are existing out there from before. We'd love for them to go away. They create issues if we ever have to foreclose. So we try to avoid them. So that is the issue. If somebody has a cell tower on a property, they should have a lease. The landowner should have a lease with a cell tower company, and that's between them to figure out.
That was my explanation, that they
Yes.
made the agreement with the cell tower company a number of years ago, and now probably don't like the agreement they made, and county should somehow make that better for them, and that's not how it works.
At no time do I want to foreclose on just a cell tower and figure out what to do with that.
I like that.
In other words, if you're gonna make one of those deals, you might want to think 10, 20 or 2 years down the road also, not just today's dollar figure.
Are they hoping they won't be taxed on the property?
Want to somehow separate the tax, yes. They want the cell tower people to somehow pay the taxes now instead of them.
Okay, so exempt that where the cell tower is from their county.
This one particular one, that was how they wanted it to go, yes.
Could they just sell the property, that part of the property
To
to,
this,
then it'd be separately assessed, right?
right?
They could split it, yes, and that portion could be split off if they wanted to do that.
But the cell tower company would have to be willing to buy it back. So
Further questions or?
I do, I was just waiting for,
I'm done.
how do we look this year versus last year on up, down?
So there's far fewer properties. Right now, there's just 28 properties on our auction list. We have gotten a lot of phone calls from prior owners and parties in interest, and also negotiated sale requests. So those are due, negotiated sale requests are due by April 24th. So that's Monday. And then requests from prior owners and parties in interest are due May 1st. That way I will have time to get in a resolution into the May cycle so that you guys can approve that at the May legislative meeting prior to the auction.
What was the May 1st was called?
Those are for prior owners of record and parties in interest, where parties in interest is a legal term. Essentially, it's people with a legal interest in the property.
Oh, okay.
And do they get some further consideration if they were a prior owner?
So we revised our policy last
Yep.
year. So yes, they get more consideration if they are a prior owner or a party in interest. Our policy actually has a pecking order in it where the prior owner of record would have first right.
Mhm,
And then I'd have to look at the policy. I believe it's a mortgage holder, then a lien holder, and then other interest parties.
At first right of refusal, really, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it's still up to the legislature whether or not you want to grant them to be able to repurchase.
Yeah.
But within the policy, yes, there is an order as far as who would be considered first.
Any further questions? Go ahead. Ari.
Jennifer, what would be an example of someone who had a legal interest in a property?
So if they held a mortgage with the property, or if they had a lien against the property or a judgment, that type of a thing.
Anybody else? No, thank you, Jennifer. Diane, I believe you're next.
Good evening. You have my report. I'll just ask if there's any questions.
This is Jen this time.
I know.
Go ahead.
I warned her ahead of time. I was interested in what the kind of relationship, the VP for workforce participation at Wells, and you're working with them to do
So we had a talk with them. They're actually reaching out to different businesses in the county to see like where their gaps are in their workforce and what kind of programs they can put together to help fill those gaps, train people, whether it's people currently in your workforce that maybe want to go into promotional roles or people outside the community so that they know these are where the jobs are going to be. So like for one example, one of them is in like construction and building maintenance. So that would be a good way to talk
So
to
well,
Gary.
we have a curriculum.
Yeah, they would have a curriculum. Some of the courses are all online, that some of them are instruction led, some of them are self-paced where you do it on your own. And depending on the type of course, there's a fee associated with it. And then they would earn like a certificate upon completion of the program.
Great, so similar to CCC where they're trying to identify where the gaps are and fill them. Wells is trying to do the same thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
And David,
Yeah, Diane, could you just update everybody about the purchasing department and the interviews and the grant manager?
Sure. So we've done 5 interviews for the director of purchasing. We have one more candidate that we're hoping to schedule next week. And then we're thinking we'll be able to make a decision and hopefully have an offer out to a candidate at that time. We do have a couple of applications that we're waiting to, we had one approved for the grant manager. We have a couple more that are being reviewed. So I'm working with Grace and we'll start those interviews soon.
Great. I just want to thank Shireen for filling in on purchasing. She's done a lot of work on it and we need to give her a little break. So
Right.
thank you very much. Thanks, Shireen.
any further questions? No, thank you, Diane. And I believe we're down to resolutions. So Ways and Means has 4 resolutions. I think let's do them one at a time. So a motion for WM1.
Second for discussion.
Okay, open for discussion. Any questions?
There was a couple things. This is the work that I thought, Chris, at one point, did you think of taking that work inside the county attorney's office, or I got that
I've been
wrong?
contemplating it, yeah.
Yes, when you made the hire, the additional attorney hire, you thought there was a chance you could take the work inside your department. But at this point, you're looking to transfer money from the treasurer's budget, but there's nothing in the resolution that talks about the dollars that to be transferred.
I can jump in on that. This is part of that 3-year transition process.
Okay,
Last year and this year, Spino and McLeod were first chair in the Article 11 foreclosure process.
Mhm.
County Attorney's Office was second chair. This year,
in order, who would do it?
yeah, they took the lead and we kind of followed in the
Okay.
footsteps just to see how the process was done. This year, 22, 23, it's going to be just the reverse, assuming this passes, where Brittany and I work through the Article 11 process. Spino and McLeod are there to back us up,
Okay.
review our work, make sure we're in the right path. The assumption is that if that goes well, then next year, the county attorney's office would take the whole process over, and Spino and McLeod would be on something like a retainer agreement. So when we get the odd questions that we do
Yep.
all year long and we don't have time to research them, we call them on the phone, they do the research, get back to us. You'll notice that there are 2 blanks in there.
Yes,
At this point, we don't have what the rate will be. Last year, I think it was $50,000. We're still negotiating that. This doesn't have to pass today. It could be tabled till next month, or it could be moved forward to Ways and Means if we get the numbers. On the cloud, we fill them in. So whatever the body wants to do. I'd hope to have the numbers by today, but we don't have them. So
So it could
there are
go-
blanks in there, and I'm not comfortable
right.
passing it, obviously, because there's blank numbers in there.
So it could go to next month's Ways and Means?
It could go to next month's Ways and Means, or just kind of move it forward and see if I can get the numbers by next week. If I don't have them, then we'll table it to whatever you want to do.
Can we move it to the ledge meeting?
If he has the numbers, yes.
Yeah, if the numbers aren't there, I'll just ask that it be.
So do we need to rescind the motion on this?
We just won't act on the motion.
No, we can pass it here, but then we can
Well,
table it at the full ledge meeting if you don't have numbers by then.
yeah,
Or if you give me permission, I'll just pull it if the numbers aren't there and clean your calendar, however you want to do.
I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
okay, then let's pass it and See what happens at the next
So we're
meeting.
gonna pass it pending having the numbers.
Okay, so all those, any further discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
You're too late. But you got something you want to say yet?
I just wanted to say this is part of a program that we had contemplated. It was costing us a lot of money to outsource to these people. And with help of Chris and Fred, we put together a program and we rolled this in over a 3-year period where we brought it back in-house to save money.
That's what I did recall, yeah.
We're gonna do the ayes once more. First one didn't count. Those in favor, aye? Anyone opposed? Carried. W2,
Move it.
adopt local law for war veterans exemption.
Second, Mark.
Okay, discussion? If not, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried also. Number 3, fixing public hearing local law, providing a tax exemption for volunteer firemen and ambulance workers. Motion needed.
Motion for discussion. Second.
Okay, discussion is open. Anybody?
I just want to remind myself, really, this is just for the public hearing at this point,
This sets, yeah,
not for the
right,
resolution.
doesn't pass the law.
Okay, and the, if I may, sir,
Yep,
the local hearing would be at the full edge
In May.
in May. Okay. I'm fine. Yep.
any further questions? David?
Yes, I just want to mention that on the face of this has come about recently. On the face of this looks wonderful. We all want to do this. But there's a lot of intricate accounting that goes along with this. That as we go forward on this, we'll bring to your attention. I was talking and working with Jenny this week on this, and she could just give you some basic ideas of all that has to go into figuring out these numbers and what they potentially will cost. Obviously, it looks great, but when you start talking about 23 towns, you got to go back and ferret out all the people that this affects and their tax rates and their properties and so on, and then figure out all that accounting to come up with some dollars. It may be a lot more substantial than you think. So we're working together on that, and we'll try to provide you with some more information on that. But obviously, if we can, obviously it looks really good. We'd like to do it, but I think all counties are wrestling with that right now.
I
Go ahead.
just wanted to point of clarification. It is still the case that an individual homeowner would have to decide if it's more in their best interest to take that $200 state credit versus this. There's probably a calculation. This is, even if we pass this, there is some capping amount to it. Is that correct? Up to $200,000, 20%.
Right.
Yep. So it would be up to the individual whether or not they get a better deal with the state or, and my only other question is, and I certainly represent the city of Auburn, but are the other towns and villages doing this along with asking the county to do this?
Some did, some have done it.
I can add.
Some other counties, Tompkins County has done it. I think Cortland County did it. So,
With the towns and villages, in addition to the county benefit of a tax break, the towns and villages can give their own tax break, is that?
Yes.
each one has to pass it separately.
Right.
In addition to.
They can use our law, for instance, but, they have to do it separately. Jennifer, please.
The town of Springport so far is the only town in our county that has passed it. But certainly any town or village could adopt the law themselves,
So
or school district, or fire district.
Just what I was gonna ask school district. No school districts yet, Jeff?
No.
That's a big.
And
that's a
like,
big-
the only municipality in our county that has passed it so far is the town of Springport.
Thank you.
Elaine, and just so you know, for the county one, there's an application process and they will have to do it every year.
Until they get to this 20-year and then they're exempt.
Well, it's still at that point.
Okay.
They'll have to do it
If
every.
they make it 20 years, then it's a forever thing, but they would have to apply every year is what you're saying?
Yep.
And do the same calculation of one or
Exactly.
the other. I guess I'm just curious, do you feel if the county does it, that the towns and villages should also. I mean,
It's up to the towns and villages.
that they certainly have the most to gain.
Do they even know about
The
it?
schools,
They don't,
school is a big one.
yes.
The school would be the biggest factor.
Tax rate.
Mhm.
Well, and you know, it's, would be $7.25 for county.
Mhm.
If the town passed, it's $1, which doesn't amount to much, okay? If school tax, it's around 14 and a quarter.
Mhm.
So unless school tax jumps in, it probably isn't worth doing it, but
Okay.
there's some demand for it out there. But basically, the whole thing is a trick or whatever you want to say by the state. They're getting out of paying their 200, which is, you know, statewide amounts to millions of bucks, okay?
Mhm.
And once again, they're passing on the burden to the county or the other municipalities rather than the state carrying the burden. You know, if you opt for the exemption, you lose your $200 or $400, whatever.
And it could be likely that some people will keep the $200 because it's a better deal for them. So that's the
Right.
rub. You have to, one or the other.
So many, unfortunately, so many of the firemen aren't going to meet the criteria of having, you know, at least, I think Jennifer's calculations came to 158,000 assessment for basically the average residents in Cayuga County outside the city. Okay, most of the firemen, half of them, at least half of them are going to fall below.
And they'd be better off with the $200. Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
they gain nothing, so, you know, just anyhow, so.
And one more thing on, isn't,
Yep.
Jennifer, isn't this also that deal where they have to be in the town,
They have to be living within the town that they serve.
which that one I
For the
just
fire
it's
district.
completely whatever.
There's issues. What does Cato do? Where our fire department's located in?
Well, there's
Cato Volunteer Fire Department.
Cato Fire Department's
Ira.
the village of Cato, but it's in the town of Ira.
Right.
And everybody's in each other's, and that's why this is just something I agree with Hans. The state is pushing, we're gonna save money by pushing this on to the
Yep.
municipalities, but we're not gonna make it fair, in plain English,
They-
because
The state's just recently allowed counties, and municipalities to do this.
What?
Has this been recent or this has been? in
Yes.
before?
This is Governor Hulk.
in the past year,
There's
Just
a
this past
3-year,
year,
there's a
okay.
3-year period to do it.
Was, we had to apply to Albany to get permission to pass such a law.
Mhm.
But now they just did away with that and just said, okay, you got permission, go ahead and do it.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
but under their guidelines,
Yes, okay.
for sure,
That's the key.
completely yes.
Okay.
The state has made the.
You can put that in the minutes.
So, let's see, we have a motion on the floor, I believe, so. Any further questions, comments? All those in favor, aye? Anyone opposed? I guess not. Number 4, bonuses for healthcare and hygiene workers
Move it for
and qualified
discussion.
employees.
Second.
Okay, could we have some comments on it,
Yes.
please?
I just was wondering what.
This is the second or third phase of what we passed a while ago
Okay. That's.
in terms of by the length of service, you get certain bonuses to certain qualifying employees. If they meet the threshold of 500, 1,000, 1,500, this is getting close to the end of that bonus. Is this the last one?
Person was eligible for 2.
Okay, and this is
Some people are done, some people might have been hired and eligible now.
for the first one. Okay, and that this is the same rules that you and Lynn and everybody looked at and who was eligible and how it,
Yes, the last one would be in March of 24. So there's 2 more, this one plus 2 more.
This is money coming from the state.
yes,
Yes.
Medicaid dollars, my understanding.
So
Medicaid
The
dollars.
local share.
I guess my question is, what's the budget transfer?
We have to make transfers within the specific department head budgets or department budgets to get them the money so that they can pay out to the eligible employees.
Who does the state give the money to?
The county, it gives the money to the county. Which account it's in, I don't know. It's in,
So it doesn't go directly to their,
Goes directly to the county and then to the various.
okay, that's what I was getting at. It doesn't go to the health department to.
no.
Lynn is on if you need any clarification. Lynn, are you listening?
Yeah, I am.
Can you comment on this, please?
Yeah, we're just doing a budget adjustment, Andy, to increase the revenue and the expense to take the money in and then put it into that salary account. So this was a couple of people or new hires, so it's really will only be a handful of people going forward. As Kathleen said, individuals can only receive 2 payments. So this is just for some of the people who've been hired recently.
Well, it just comes into the general fund and then we have to disperse it where it needs to go, is what you're saying.
Exactly, yeah.
Any further questions? If not, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried also. Okay, Elaine? leave you on.
Yes, I think it might be easier if I ask if there's any of the 22 resolutions that anyone would want separated. And then I can go over that before I just try to group them all together. Okay.
If I may, I'd like HH3 explained, 13 and 22, more for explanation.
Okay, HH3, what's the other one?
13,
13.
and 22.
Okay, 13.
Can we offer?
All right, so I make a motion to bundle everything but those three.
And I second that.
Okay, discussion on any of the others? The bundle? If not, all those in favor of the bundle without the
3,
format?
13, and 22.
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried.
Okay.
HH3, I'll move for discussion.
One second.
I'll second it.
Okay. HH3 is, I think, been discussed a month ago at Ways and Means. It was discussed a month ago at Health and Human Services. It came through as a resolution this month at Health and Human Services. And this is the request, and I think some of the backup paperwork went to all of the legislature to fill 100% grant-funded Deputy Director of Health Services. My understanding is this Deputy Director position was on the books in civil service, but it had not been funded. At the time of the preliminary budget, there was a request for a Deputy Director that wasn't put in the 2023 budget. There has been a request to, and a case made that there is a real need for this position. As luck would have it, there is also a infrastructure grant that the state just made available to local health departments to build their infrastructure and their staffing. There is just about $130,000 coming into the county health department's budget in the form of a grant for the next 5 years. That I asked Kathleen to calculate how much of that $129,000 would be used if this position was budgeted and with fringe. And it would be about $111,000 out of that 129 that would be used and could be used for the next 5 years to offset the position. I know, Mark, you had some questions about what would be done with the additional funds.
Yes.
And she had sent me the scope of the grant, and there is quite, and she's here, a list of things that would be eligible to be spent on. But I think the majority is going to be staff development and training and building of the current staff that is going to be still employed at the health department. Do you have anything specific that you would use that money for? It is staff development and growth and leadership training, and
That you're correct. Those are exactly the things that we're looking to be able to put in the remaining funds.
and she did get word that any of the money that isn't spent in the first year could be rolled forward. So she could get, I don't know what kind of staff development she's going to be looking at, but at this point, my understanding is you're not looking at trying to find funding for another position. It's really an investment in the health department's current staff.
Correct. And I'll just add, in speaking with Lydia and HR and dealing, some of the trainings we hope to be able to provide, we hope to be able to open up to other county departments as well, if we're able to successfully identify trainers.
If I may.
Yep.
When you say staff development, are we talking, and you said roll the money from the first year into the second year?
It's not.
Am I correct in that statement?
Yep.
So I guess staff development, are you talking about salaries? Are you talking about sending them to a specific training that would cost money?
for travel expenses and the actual cost of going to the training? Just, I'm curious, where are we talking about?
You're not speaking of bonuses at this point at all.
That'd be a dream, but I don't think, we know that it doesn't work within our civil service process. Exactly what you said, Mark. We'd like to be able to send staff to training. We'd like to be able to bring trainers in. We would like to, there's a couple of topics that we've asked people to say, what would you recommend? De-escalation techniques, customer service skills. That's something everybody can benefit from. And then there might be trainings for particular work that will help a subject area. Identify that to a conference for a day that we in the past have not been able to benefit from.
And you have about $18,000 left each year after you do the salary and fringe. And that's what I meant, that if she only spent 10 of it, the 8 could roll over into the second year.
And so I'm, at the figures that you mentioned, you're looking at disposition cost and 111,000
With salary,
approximately.
with fringe benefits and things else.
And that's going to have to be, rolled into the budget after the 5 years
Yep,
of the grant.
yep, it would be eligible for base funding of state aid and now the fringe benefits are also eligible for reimbursement. So yes, there will be at 5 years from now, a local share to this position, but it is offset by by revenue and mostly state aid.
So when you say based on, there's some possibility of funds being recaptured by revenue, the entire health department revenue or dispositions revenue?
The health department gets at least $650,000 of a base grant every year. And until that, when that base grant is used up, and it's taken a long time for that to be used up, my understanding is because they've got so much additional funding and grants. But once that base grant is used up, say that happens in September or July or whatever, all public health core work is reimbursed by the state at 36%, and the salary and fringe associated with the positions are also reimbursed for the first time by state aid.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Good.
I got kind of a two-pronged question then. This was the same one that we were eliminating a nurse or something?
This was an overall proposal of adding a deputy director, reclassifying a public health administrator to a director of health education and public information officer. All of it was rolled into one. And yes, it did include promoting a nurse into a supervising public health nurse position because she'll get her bachelor's degree in April, and then not asking for the fill behind as a way, if there were concerns, and I think you asked it well, Andy, you mean to tell me this is more important to the department than filling this additional nurse that has been vacant? And I'm like, yes, that's really the case.
So will it stay more important over the next 5 years?
I would say so. I mean, again,
That's my only thing.
yes.
If in 2 years you're asking for a nurse again,
Yep. And they've had difficulty hiring and recruiting a nurse. Gone without this supervising nurse for a while because they can't get a bachelor's prepared staff to want to take the job. Now they have one internally. She'll be upgraded. She might be able to get some promotability into director of community health. But I think at this point, you've been down this nurse. You're willing to go without at this point to get the deputy. Correct.
and do we still have our part-time people?
The 22 per diem nurses that you have for the clinics will be pretty much phasing out, and the medical staff when
When we're not performing COVID clinic work, we don't need to use them. As you saw, we have our last clinic coming up this week. That's our last public clinic. We're not laying them off. They're per diems, so we're waiting to see what the next few months comes up, what happens. But then as we develop our budget for 2024, we should have our answer by that point and can make more permanent determinations.
And they don't get a minimum payment if they don't work.
There's
Right.
no pay for no work.
They just stay in the position unless they're called in to work.
Any further questions? Comments? Not all those in favor of HH3? Aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Okay, HH 13, authorize the creation and filling of a full-time staff social worker at community mental health.
Move it.
Second for discussion.
Okay, that is the one that I asked Lauren to amend prior to the Health and Human Services meeting to make it a little clearer about what was happening here. Because the initial resolution said, I'd like to add a full-time staff social worker, and we have money in our budget to do it. And I'm like, how do you do that when you didn't have it in the 2023 budget when it passed? So she explained what the rationale was, and because of their book of business and how much work they have, she had 2 part-time staff in her mental health budget that they have been unable to fill with part-time positions. The resolution calls for transferring, I think it's 54,000 some odd dollars from her part-time line of her 2023 budget into her full-time salary line for this period of time through the remainder of the year. And that's really how she's going to be able to add a staff social worker position in her budget that she didn't have initially budgeted. So her request is there's more work than they have staff to do it. A creative way to get additional staff. She feels, even though it's hard to get a staff social worker full-time, it's certainly easier to hire a full-time staff than to try to find people that are part-time willing to take the job with no benefits. She explained that a lot of times the part-time positions are people who have retired as full-time lines, and they want to come back and do some part-time work, and they're fully trained and it works out great. The department is not in the position that that's really happening at this point in time. So she doesn't see any real feeder into those 2 part-time staff. So she'd like to transfer the money and ask to fill the staff social worker position. And without sounding like rhetoric, there certainly is billable hours that are associated with any full-time staff seeing patients at the mental health center.
So I'll just ask the same question. So the other 2 positions, we're just gonna.
They're unfunded, and we asked her at the Health and Human Services meeting, so you can't fill those. And she said, well, I wouldn't be able to fill them without funding. So she's moving the funding out of her part-time line into her 0.1 salary line. So essentially the funding is going to be moved up in her budget.
Don't plan on funding them in the future then.
The 2 part-timers.
Yes.
I would think if the book of business stays the way it is, and you'd rather keep the full-time than next year put 2 part-timers in that you likely can't fill.
So there's no possibility that next year we're gonna see, a position or 2 positions, even just 1 for the part-time when we hire, if we.
The only thing that she could do next year is say, we need another full-time staff because we have a volume of work that would require us to see patients. And, again, debate whether we should have a mental health clinic or we don't, but it has a very big footprint here. And if we're going to run the clinic, they asked her about not having open access. Didn't really want to do that. But at some point, you have to have enough staff to see the patients that are coming through the door. So I don't know what next year will bring, but I can't imagine she'd say, well, I've changed my mind. Let's get rid of this full-time position and start part-time staff. In one breath, they're attractive because they don't have fringe benefits to them. But in the other vein, they're very difficult to get filled.
I guess my only concern would be is that we fund this position full-time and then, they want to keep that plus bring on another 1 or maybe 2 part-timers next year. There's my concern.
Yep.
I'm not against the full-time position. I want to be very clear about that.
Yep.
I'm just concerned that this is going to lead to, another position down the road.
Yep, and I think Lauren, if I'm not speaking for her, is very cognizant of the fact that at some point, people are going to ask, are you covering your costs in your operation? Is the clinic making enough revenue to cover the total operating costs of the clinic? So yeah, she would be foolish in my mind to put on additional staff that you don't need. Right. So, but yeah, I mean, there's no guarantee in anything, but at this point, you know, this is what the plan would be to try to get this full-time staff filled.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So I think my concern is exactly sort of echoes what you're saying in that. I guess I'll just ask the question up front. Are the fringe benefits covered in this? So what you say when you transfer the 56, is that just for salary and the fringe is not?
My assumption, and I can ask her, my assumption is, because Jim asked me the question, how can you transfer part-time money and get a full-time line? I think they anticipated January, February, March, April is pretty much over. We budgeted from May till the end of the
Also gonna
year.
say a full-time therapist, as far as the revenue that they bring in is over their salary and benefits if they have a full caseload.
But no, but the 54,000 you
Yes.
lose will cover salary and fringe till the end of the year.
Correct.
From May 1st.
Yes,
Whatever
and
you
also
use.
because of the revenue that they would be bringing.
Right. And if I could just do a follow-up, I know I hit you with this all the time, but it's pretty much, it's been stated that the reimbursement differential between county clinics and not-for-profit organizations will be equalized at some point. I know it hasn't happened yet, but that's still in the works and could impact the billing revenue in the future, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we at the time get an enhanced rate due to being a safety net provider for the community. I don't know when that will change or when that will change. I know there's been talk about it for a while, so I'm
Okay, but it's not anything imminent and you don't
Right.
think that it's impactful upon the position budgeting at this time?
correct.
Thank you.
Any further questions? If not, all those in favor of HH 13, I believe?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried. What was next, 18?
22.
22.
All right, appropriating $60,000 of ARPA funds for the homeless outreach and advocacy program. And that is,
Sorry, move it for discussion.
Second.
that is a follow-up to the email I sent, plus the presentation that was done by Sherry Weiss, the Director of Community Health Network. And this is the ask, similar to the ask from the city of Auburn, to allow some of our ARPA funds, like they use some of their ARPA funds, to continue this particular program, and merging 30 and 30 to that $260,000 for the next 2 years. Auburn gives 60, will potentially give 60. I had, talked this, Lydia asked at the meeting, was this discussed by the ARPA committee? And, it was Jim, myself, Christine, and Bob. We had gone, we've gone over this. They certainly had felt they could support this. And I thought it was wise to have her come and present at the ledge meeting so that if you had any questions about this, you could. And if this passes, then the county attorney's office will develop a contract and, pass this ARPA funding over to Cayuga Community Health Network to continue homeless outreach and advocacy.
Any further comments or questions?
If I may, sir.
Please.
I guess my concern is I know we're funding this for 2 years with 120,000.
No, 60 is from the city of Auburn.
Right.
60 from us.
Right.
Yep,
So
yep.
2 years, 120,000, 60 from us.
Yep.
60. I guess, I hear numbers like it's $100 a night, put somebody in the hotel. I mean, start talking, how long or at what point in time are we gonna say we gotta do something other than keep throwing money down the rabbit hole?
Yeah, I mean, I think the real honest reality is homeless housing is a responsibility of the Department of Social Services. And it's coming in with emergency housing needs, even after they're screened. Can you live with a friend? Can you stay with your mother? Whatever. If they are truly homeless, they have no place to go, and they are deemed eligible, then we have to provide emergency housing. We are defaulting to doing it in hotels, which is on everyone's radar, the worst place we could do it. again, the Housing Visions project that you guys supported, the 250,000, it's the beginning of a plan to take the property on Grant Ave and the 15 or 16 beds they have and move it into eventually 56 beds where it's supervised. There's police, it becomes a real shelter that it gets people out of the hotel. But at this point, I think the last time Christine spoke, there was a record number, 160 people in emergency housing. It is $100 or more a day in a hotel.
Yes.
It's very difficult. Some people who have emergency housing needs, they also have mental health needs, they have addiction problems, they have a lot of things getting in their way. They need a lot of support and case management to get them into permanent housing. We don't have a ton of permanent housing in the community, but you're right, it is a big problem and it's a very expensive program for the county because the county's obligated for a single individual is to pay 71% of the costs of that program. So anything we can do to mitigate, not that the homeless shelter is going to be cheap, but if there's a sentiment that people are only looking at being placed in a hotel in Cayuga County, we're going to be getting
That's the
away from
problem.
that.
Yeah, if I could comment on that, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say that I'm in full support of this. I have extreme feelings about shelters and their impact on the community, but the reality is in my other job, I see it, hear it daily. The word is out, just go to Cayuga, they'll put you up in a hotel. So it is expanding probably exponentially. I don't know, you say that it's
And
pretty bad.
we did look once, Chris, and we took a snapshot of, there were 132 people in emergency housing and 8 of them only didn't have the last known address as Cayuga County. I think this assumption is, oh my God, everybody's coming in.
Certainly there is though, I can tell you, not only that, but we cannot be housing them at hotels within the community. We need to have that. What you outlined there is the comprehensive approach, just like modeled on the rescue mission.
Exactly.
It's a just unfortunate necessity. And I'll be the first to say that I was adamantly opposed to, having a shelter, but
And Weedsport became a hotel.
Yeah.
Right.
Can we ask what hotels we use?
Roadway and the Best Western in Weedsport.
Days in.
The Hotel Central that's in between the two arterials, right in the middle of the city.
D-Lies?
D-Lies.
Is D-Lies just for homeless or is D-Lies for?
Oh, I think they're,
D-Lies is a special place.
yeah, it's a special place.
Well, that's the only reason why I asked, because
Some folks that are D-Lies are not Department of Social Services paid, but they are.
well, that's why I asked. Is it,
There's restrictions of where certain people can live.
yeah, for 2 reasons. Are we mixing people that we shouldn't mix? And then I also know some people that, not to get into another rabbit hole, that live around there that aren't exactly happy with the situation at D-Lies. Let's just put it that way. Because they wind up walking down the road and onto their properties.
I think I can answer that. That's because there's this thing that has to be Sarah compliant. Sheriff is here too. Sarah compliant, and that has to be within a certain distance from daycare, schools, and all this other stuff. So when you, in a relatively rural county like Cayuga, when you shrink that down, it leaves basically, I don't want to single out just D-Lies, but it's one of the few that is a viable option.
But that's why I'm curious about, if we're putting homeless, when we say homeless, probably not just talking about individuals. We're probably talking about families.
Yeah, there is, Merriman House has better opportunities for families down in Auburn, right?
Transitional, there is a transitional program.
But some families will end up in hotels, and you have had to look, or your staff has had to look to make sure that you're mixing the right people.
Sure, and the intake team really does take all of that into consideration about, where we're putting families, where we're putting people that have restrictions, if they have, sexual offending background, where we're putting them so that, we can keep people safe as possible. That definitely goes into the considerations that we have when we're trying to find a place for someone.
Bob?
Well, I was just going to say, the presentation was great. And my takeaway from the presentation is that they're frontline workers that work within the network of your agency and get those intermediate needs in the right direction. They go out and assess, was my impression.
Negotiate with landlords.
Whatever
At
it
risk,
takes
yep.
to, yeah. So I mean, that's, I thought it was a great presentation. They do a great job.
I believe we asked for some data after year one. Once it starts, as to, whether we're putting good money after bad.
Yep.
If it's working, what they did, who they housed.
I'll make sure that.
And we ask for the data after year one, and
Yep.
then we can compare it after year two. To see if it's something that we should continue.
Go ahead.
And I guess my understanding, I heard this, if it's true, some of the Code Blue money has some, an outreach component to it too. Is that true? So, yes.
Or does the hotel or inn, whatever you call it, they have the right to refuse these people, or they don't have a choice?
Oh, they don't have to, they don't have to.
So I guess the follow up, where I'm going with that question is, what happens if one of these hotels says, hey, look, I'm getting a bad name here, I'm driving more business away. What happens when they say, we're done?
Oh, that's
What do we do? Or I guess, what's the plan?
The shelters built.
Right. There's a lot of money going into these various hotels, so it wouldn't be that easy for them to, some of them to say, we don't want your business anymore. But if they did, we would still be obligated to do something for people who have emergency need. That is the obligation of the department.
Let's say it how it is. Some of these hotels are liking what they're getting out of this.
Yeah.
So.
I think that's why, that's why the case management is so important, to have a presence in the hotel, to make sure that they know that we are checking on folks. Having this homeless outreach coordinator, also trying to make sure that we're, some of it is linking people up to services and supports so that we can avoid having them go into the hotels. That would be less taxing on the case managers of the work with that whole population. Everyone that we have that's being provided emergency housing has a case management component attached to them. So trying to make sure that the hotels understand that we're working, they can call us if they have a problem. We try to get in and mediate any sort of issues that are happening so that they are still willing to work with us. And to your point, there are definitely certain hotels in the county that are not willing to take clients of the Department of Social Services. There are some that have tried, and then because of situations that have happened, they've decided that that's not something that they want to continue.
And outside of Code Blue, people are somewhat held accountable. They can't just party on down.
Yep, there's sanctions if certain things happen and there's certain behaviors, then we definitely have some sanctions that we can impose.
For a period of time, right?
For a period of time, unless there's some caveats to that. If they're involved with adult protective services, which means that they have some sort of a something going on, behavioral, mental health, substance use that, really prohibits them from, functioning successfully. And, in that case, we have, we plug in more supports and more services for them because those are the most needy of the folks that we work with as far as their issues that they're dealing with.
Once more.
Thanks. Been trying to be quiet. No, I'm very glad that over the course of the time that I've been here, this is the first year, thankfully, for the ARPA money, we could take some of that money to invest in a real solution to this. I said for years to the previous director, what happens if DLI's burns down tomorrow? What are you going to do? What can we possibly do? Although I have some constituents that would be, but I'm just glad we're kind of going in the right direction.
with housing visions, because we need a real solution. We can't depend on these hotels. It is expensive, but it's unsafe. And I think in the case of one particular place, we're also kind of relying on the personnel who own the place to kind of help with case management. That's inappropriate. So I think we have ways to go with this, but we're on the right track. So I'm happy to see that.
Second up to the said, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Believe that. Your piece Nate's,
Thank you, sir.
Next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Government Operations has 4 resolutions. DO4, we added at Government Operations. It's we had discussion about its policy manual. So relatively dry. So if someone wanted to offer 1 through 4, I'll do that. If not, please.
We'll offer 1 through 3 of the bundle.
All right, 1 through 3.
A second.
Motion a second, discussion on the bundle as well.
Yes. I just want to, I didn't get a chance to look at that. DO1 was updated. It should be updated right to the, before we approve it.
With additional names, you mean, Jim?
Yes. So when it goes to full ledge, I don't know who we talked to about that.
I can check with the clerk's office in the morning
So
and
we
make
have it
sure it's updated as of the ledge meeting.
Yes, yeah. Thank
I'll
you.
do that.
okay, so we have a bundle of 1 through 3. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried.
I'll move 4 for discussion.
Second, Basile.
I just want you to, say what it is so people know.
The manual, addition to the manual. One of them, it might be in my desk. All right, so Chris handed them out. So you should all have them. Oh, that's right, you weren't here. Do you want to see a copy of it? So they're, one was some outdated, and Chris, jump in anytime. One was some, some outdated titles, like central purchasing. And then Department of Public Works, and then here's all the highlighters. And then,
So we're just removing what we don't have anymore. Basically, in section 49.
and the speeding schedule change and the senior citizen really doesn't anymore.
Anybody want to speak on it or quickly?
Andy, do you want this?
I'm good.
Okay.
Chris sent it to me. I wasn't able to attend that meeting. I had listened on Zoom, but it looked like it was.
Do you want to see it?
It looked like, no, he sent it to me electronically.
Okay.
It looked like it was mostly cleanup stuff.
These changes were cleanup, but then there was also the comment that for those that weren't there, asked the Government Ops Committee to kind of consider, some future amendments, not just for this year, but also for group of 11. And they said they'd roll it around and, discuss it amongst themselves. So if you have any input, contact a member of the Government Ops Committee.
Any further discussion? Not all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried again. Public Works.
I was gonna bundle, huh?
Huh?
I was gonna bundle.
None?
None.
None?
Then a bundle of 0.
Okay, Chairman.
Sorry, I skipped over you, but figured she can cover that. Nothing.
Public Works had 5 resolutions. They all went through committee and passed.
It is a bundle, Mark.
Second.
Okay, we're looking at the bundle. Any discussion? Anybody? If not, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried also. Judicial and Public Safety, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judicial and Public Safety has 3 resolutions tonight. I would offer JP1 through JP3 as a bundle. All were passed at committee unless someone would like one separated.
I'll move it. Daily.
Second.
Okay, discussion is open for the bundle of 3. Hearing none.
Just one quick one. I remember we discussed this, but I don't know, Brian, you probably can answer, or Brittany. JP2, that was going to be something the public can look up, right?
That's a digital platform, right? So that would allow the public to download an app that would allow them to track sex offenders in our community, where they're located, when they change their addresses, things like that. So it would provide a lot more resources for the public to know who's living in their community.
So when we do this app, will that be made somehow public to them I mean, how will they be able to find the app?
If this is approved, then we would certainly put out a press release and put that out to the community that that's available, that people could download that from the App Store on their phone.
Where can they look for it now? I've had this question.
So the Department of Criminal Justice Services does have a website. There's a website, DCJS, you can go on and search that, but it's a little clunky. You can search by a specific name, but you can't do like a radius around your home to determine who might be living within that radius. You'd have to go in and search and zip code and then look at every individual and see where they live. So this would just provide a much easier way for people to see who's in their community.
Okay.
I believe also the state has a website.
Any further discussion?
Notifications from the state, you can do it by county and so forth, where it says XYZ moved into this street, gives you the street address and everything.
Schools ought to have something like that.
That is the state DCJS.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no further discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? I guess that's it, so thank you. One more.
Second.
What? Motion to adjourn.
Oh,
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Don't forget, everyone,
Do the minutes, actually.